Now just tweaking the shape of the whole model. You can drag around the model using the widget tools as well as the sort of sculpting, painting tools. That lets you change the shape of the whole model very easily, all at once or in little parts, depending on the scale of the widget move tool. It also helps make the model a bit less symmetrical. Now for this model, I knew it was going to be used in an illustration from the front, so I didn't put as much work into the side view. But again, that all saves time. Adding a little bit of attitude. Making him a bit more angry, pulling down the eyebrows. You can also use the widget tools along one axis. So, for instance, if you want to drag, say, part of the eyebrow forwards, but you want to select it and do the dragging in the perspective view, you can hold down Z, and then anything you drag will only move in the Z axis, even though you're using the perspective view, which might not be lined up with any particular axis. So the head's almost done as the main part of it, so we're going to move it back in line with the sketch. Adding even the slightest bit of tilt suddenly makes our symmetrical model much more interesting. Next we'll be adding some sea creatures protruding out of the monster's head. These are going to be line objects, so you draw a line and draw the start and end sizes. Notice how I literally traced the path of my sketch and it made the model to suit. And then by editing using the widget tools, I can add the third dimension back to that curve. I want some spiky fins on this model. I could add them by using the surface sculpting tools, but instead I'm going to use the Curvy map, which is a type of displacement map. All the UVs are already set up on this model, so I don't need to do any unwrapping. I paint on the surface the same way as I would do if I was using surface sculpting tools. But as you see in the top left, it's building up an image map recording all the painting I do. And so the model itself isn't touched, but it's then distorted by this Curvy map image. This means that I can use any painting tools I have at my disposal, like blurs and filters, and even you could swap this map out to Project Dog Waffle, swap it back in again after applying a filter, and then the effect will actually take place in 3D as a distortion on the surface of the model. So if you look in the front view, you can see that I now have fins dotting all the way up the end of that model, and it would have been quite fiddly to do that by painting them on one by one, actually in 3D. Much easier to do it in a 2D view. Now to make them a little bit more interesting, I'm just adding some definition. Now beneath the Curvy map slider, where you can see the little picture in the object properties, on the top it's the displacement amount, which scales from negative displacement to positive displacement. But the second slider is for smoothing, which gives you an extra level of control which smooths out the final effect on the mesh after it's applied. And you can slide that up and slide it back down again, just to suit the model and the image. Now, to make these snake-like creatures a bit more interesting, I'm putting some longitudinal ribs and ridges on them. Simply by painting vertical lines on the Curvy map, the 3D model now has these ridges tracking all the way along the length of the creature. You can paint Curvy maps either on the model itself or in the 2D view, or even in your own paint software. Now, another trick Curvy's got up its sleeve is redrawing curves. So once I've drawn a curve, I can use the redraw curve tool, the little pencil with an R, draw a new curve, and Curvy will create sort of a hybrid between the old curve and the new curve to match up with what you've drawn. So in this case, we've got a new creature which lines up exactly with our sketch, but it immediately has all of the richness and detail of the other creature.